Hello, my name is Keiko Tanabe. Thank you so much for joining me today as I demonstrate a watercolor painting on Plein-Air. I'm visiting the island of Procida in southern Italy. As you may know, this island was made famous as a location of a popular movie called Il Postino, The Postman. I'm standing on top of the hill and I can see the beautiful, colorful fishing village. Well, I know you can't wait. Let me show you the view that I'm seeing down below. It's beautiful, isn't it? I can't wait to see how my painting of this view will turn out. As you can see, I set up my easel right here, and I'll show you all the materials that I need. Everything is in this backpack. Water, of course, it's going to be a watercolor painting. And the water container. And all the brushes nicely rolled up. And my palette. Now I'm good to go. It's a bit overcast right now, but I could be standing in the sun in the next few minutes. So let's get started. As you can imagine, this place can be pretty crowded and touristy during the day, especially in the summertime. But it's still early in the morning and it's relatively quiet. I think what I have to do first is to think about composition. Because I like the whole scene, but I feel I need to choose my focus. So is my painting going to be more about the village or harbor? I think that choice has to be made. And after that, I would like to look at the value structure in the composition, how darks and lights are showing up and how they're making a contrast in a pleasing way. So to understand both, I like to do a little sketch in this space right here, and I'm gonna just use a pencil to do a quick one. But just the first one, I'm trying my idea that I have in mind, but if it doesn't look good, I might even do the second one. But let's see what happens with this one. Do you hear the bells? It's 9 o'clock. I like the colors, all colors you can imagine. I see in the village, and each building is painted in a different color. Reds, yellows, greens, and blues, and that's beautiful. But I'm more attracted to the harbor area where the boats are, because the morning light is being reflected in the water, and the boats are mostly parked, but there may be some activities and when the fishermen come to work. But in the village, all the buildings are stacked up on each other on the hillside, and there's this beautiful church with a dome. I think in the hillside, that building has to be a point of interest, important point of interest. And I noticed on the waterfront promenade, there are lots of restaurants. They're getting ready for customers, and by opening up the umbrellas. Maybe I'll go down there later to have a nice seafood lunch and a glass of Italian wine. Let me take a moment to point out where the horizon is in the composition. I have it right here, so it's quite high. And so this means in today's composition, on my picture plane, I have mostly foreground area. That's where the activities are. That's where my interests are. That's what I'm painting. So by having the horizon high, I have very little space for the background area. Without doubt, brightly painted houses on the hillside are a major attraction to anybody's eye. But in this compositional sketch, I decided to let the harbor area take most of the foreground space. Because what's inspiring me, I think, is this beautiful morning light coming from the sky. Even though I'm not including the sky in my composition, it's reflected in the water. So I hope this composition is more effective for what I'm trying to do, which is to capture light in this painting. One sure way to know whether I have a solid idea about light and a good understanding of its relationship with the dark is to do value study and check how the contrasts are happening on the sketch. As you can see, I already started doing a value study here. I'm using a water-soluble graphite pencil. The way I use this pencil is like you're seeing. Right after I finish the line sketch of the composition, I quickly shade the dark areas, and then I apply water there with a paintbrush, and then use the dissolved graphite to spread it to the mid-value areas to finish it. I like using watercolor paper for this type of work. This exercise really forces you to think hard where to save light, because in watercolor painting, if the light is lost, it's very difficult, sometimes impossible to recover it. So please do this value study before you start a painting. It's fun to do, and it doesn't take a long time. This is a quick and easy way to make sure your painting is going to be a good one. As I always say, the value of doing a value study is doing it. Of course, it has to look good in the end, but if the first one doesn't look good, you can think about how to improve it and do the next one. It doesn't take a long time. So spend some time doing this to make sure you have a clear understanding of the relationship between light and dark in your painting, and this way you can feel more relaxed and confident when you paint. So when I arrived on this location around 8 in the morning, there are some clouds in the sky and it's still a little bit overcast, but the sun maybe come out anytime soon, and that could be a problem if I take too long doing this value study, because the sunlight might change the value scheme, the whole value scheme, completely different. So if that happens, I might get confused, or I may have to have another value study to prepare for the painting. So that's why doing a value study shouldn't take a long time, it should be quick. The idea is to understand how you want to create the passage of light in your painting. So I'm pretty happy with the sketch. I feel ready to proceed to do a preliminary drawing for painting. I usually keep the sketch right next to the paper so I can look at it, because if you put it away, well, there's no point of doing a sketch. You have to use it. I have a 4B pencil in my hand. That's what I like using to do a drawing. So the drawing is essentially a enlarged version of the sketch. This step gives an excellent opportunity to review all the important things I thought about when I was doing a sketch, but also there are things that I was not sure about, or I might have not included in the sketch. This time is really the last time I can make a decision so that I can feel good about everything that's happening in the painting. Because drawing really is the foundation of a painting. We have to do everything possible to make it strong. Panoramic view like this tends to have too many small shapes within, so it's important not to feel overwhelmed. So it's so easy to let it happen. What I'm trying to do is to focus on big shapes. As I see in this view, I see 4 big shapes. One, sky, another village, and third, promenade, and the last one, harbor. So the first thing I did was to divide the paper into 4 parts, making sure each part is a different size and the proportion is good. So the second step of the drawing for me is to see if the division of the paper has a cohesive feel to it. If not, something is not right, and I have to give it another thought and make sure in my gut that I can feel good about it by changing something. If everything looks good, I go ahead and put the smaller shapes in each big shape. So the sky in this painting is relatively small. I didn't do anything, but the village, and I have to put lots of buildings and the promenade, there are umbrellas and maybe possibly some people, and the harbor, many, many boats. So I still have a lot of work to do. As I mentioned earlier, one of my favorite Italian movies called Il Postino was filmed on this island. When I first learned about it, I wanted to come here so bad, and I eventually made it. So I came back for the second time and the third time. And I just fell in love with the friendly people and the beautiful colors of the flowers and the houses and this authentic feel of the fishing village. Here comes the bells again. It's so pretty. Let's have a listen. So back to talking about the movie, when I first arrived on this island and I saw familiar scene here and there on the street and the busy town square and on the quiet beach, and I'm just happy today to be able to show you of a painting demonstration of probably one of the loveliest and most iconic views of this island of Procida, which is not so far away from the big city of Naples in southern Italy. At this moment, I'd like to talk a little bit more about composition. Oh, here comes a truck. Maybe I should let it pass. Well, this is the reality of painting on plein air, because there are all kinds of distractions out there, including noises. I feel pretty lucky. I seem to have learned how to tune out loud noises. So actually, once I start painting, I don't really hear loud noises. Of course, if I'm teaching on plein air, I have to hear my students, especially when they want to ask me questions. That I can do. But I wonder if this is an ability one can train to have. Maybe, maybe not. Because some people seem to be very sensitive to the noise, although probably I'm not. Did you just hear seagulls? They were quite noisy, weren't they? Actually, I like outside noises like that as long as it's not terribly loud, because that's the kind of thing that puts me in the moment, puts me in the scene. I'm part of the scene that I'm painting. And actually, it does help me to feel connected on an emotional level to the subject that I'm painting in front of me. Sorry, I just got sidetracked. Let's go back to what I was thinking of telling you about composition. I wanted to point out something about the focal point. I believe good painting has a focal point. I chose one particular thing to be a focal point, which I'm drawing right now. So this boat is different from all the others because it's physically separated, and also it's placed in between light and dark reflections. So it makes it very eye-catching, and it plays an important role. So another thing that I have to take into consideration to make a good drawing for this painting is probably a perspective, especially in drawing those houses on the hillside. But I wouldn't worry too much because they're all tiny, meaning they're far away, and they're much closer to the horizon line. On the other hand, boats are farther away from horizon, and then also the far away boats and the close-up boats, you have to show a little bit different look. So it requires a bit of knowledge on foreshortening. Before I begin, let me quickly show you my materials.